10-man Newcastle 2, Man United 1. It was only going to be a matter of time before this came about. The last performances against Crystal Palace, West Ham and Everton have not been good enough. We have been crying out for intensity. Apparently, the players are training less in training, and it's starting to show because in the last two games, the last three games, like 3 or 4 games from West Ham, which played West Ham, the intensity was not there. We had to wait until the 96th minute before we scored. We played Everton, the intensity was not there. One moment of brilliance from Sesko, and then he scored. We played Crystal Palace. That first half was shambolic. It was so poor that we weren't with any intensity. Palace, who had played on Thursday, played better than us, and until they got a red card and we got a penalty, we couldn't have won that game. And today you saw the same thing. We were on 10 man and Newcastle were the better team. They were playing much better than us, and it's a problem that has to be addressed because if you look at the first games of Michael Carrick, the game against Arsenal and against Man City, one of the things that was there was intensity, and some that intensity carried over from the Ruben Amorim regime, because one thing that Amorim got right was the aggressiveness, the fitness, because he trained them hard, and when you train these players hard, they were had the intensity. But since then, the training the training exercises were reduced, as we can see here from the media every now and then. And when the training exercises were reduced, then they had to go for 13-day break in the middle of the season while other teams were playing midweek. And it's starting to show that one thing that this team now lacks is intensity, and you can't play in the Premier League without lack of intensity. If you are being outplayed by 10 men, especially if you look at that midfield, the likes of Tonali and Jolinton on their own run now, midfield rugged, and with that extra man, they were all over the place. The players like Elanga, Willock, they were running much harder and covering more distance than the 11th players we had. And this is a case that shows that there's something really to consider, and that's why you wait until the end of the season before deciding who will be the manager. So one of the things is this was an audition for Michael Carrick in this game against Newcastle, and I think he failed this audition against Newcastle because the team was not good enough. They were not putting in enough crosses. They are not supplying Sesko enough. Sesko was in the box, and when you have 10 men, you have to supply your a striker, because he's a 6'5" striker, and if you supply him well enough, he'll get you the goals. So that just like he's been doing in the other games, but they just kept moving the ball sideways and sideways. And just like Everton, when we lost with 10 men, this is another game we lose with 10 men, which shows that the problems have not yet been fixed. If you look at the player ratings, Lamens had a 6 over 10. He made a few good saves in the early stages of the game, but the goals that were scored, one of them was both goals that were scored, there is nothing that much that he could have done with them. One of them was a penalty. It's a 50-50 whether you catch a penalty or not. In fact, it is to the advantage of the person striking the penalty. And the second goal was just a sublime finish by Osula. So he gets a 6 over 10. Shaw had a 5 over 10. Shaw keeps on not crossing the ball, because the game, I don't remember a single cross I saw from coach Socho. And within that time, and you have a very good person who can head the ball, and every time he got into a position to cross, he just recycled possession, took it back, and while it's safe and you don't lose the ball and you keep your passing percentages high, but it doesn't help the team when you don't take any risks. Maguire had a 6 over 10. He had a relatively good game, but in the cases where those two goals were scored, especially that second goal, I think that was the problem with Malacia. Malacia should have covered the player, but once he comes inside and takes a shot, then there's nothing you can do about it. Euro had a 5 over 10. We did well defensively without really impacting the game in terms of passing. Mazraoui had a 6 over 10. He had a pretty decent game until the point when he was injured and Malaysia had to come on, and from there on, the game didn't look like we would really win it. Casemiro, he scored one of the goals that got us back into the game at 1-1, and he's coming in with so many goals. In this season, he scored 6 goals, and those goals have been fundamental, but he doesn't have the pace that you need in midfield. They were unrugged, Casemiro, both Casemiro and Maino. Tonali kept Tonali, Jolinton, Ramsey, they ran them ragged, and until the point Ramsey also got a red card, and they still didn't take control of that midfield even in the second half. Maino, this is one of his worst games since Michael Carrick came back. He had no control of the game. He was not impacting the game. He kept, I think the whole game is like he was ghosting. I didn't see much of his impact in the game, especially when you are supposed to take the game by the scruff of the neck once the other team goes down and one of their midfielders is not there, you expect they would have impacted the game more, but he was nowhere to be seen. He kept being bumped off the ball and he had no control of this game. So this was a poor game from Maino. I give him a 4/10. Bruno was not good enough today. He gave away a needless penalty, and then he made amends for it by a good assist for Casemiro. He also created some good chances for some players, but overall he wasn't having that much of an impact. I think he needed to put the ball more into the box, because the few times he put the ball into the box, it created danger. One of the cases where Sesko had to even fight against 2-3 Newcastle players, but still almost scored. So the game today was about creating chances, and you weren't having enough touches in the box. You weren't putting the ball more in the box, and players like Bruno should have done better. Cunha had a terrible game. Overall, I don't think this is the kind of game that really shows you why we need a left winger. He kept coming inside, leaving Shaw alone to deal with uh, the wing on his own. So every time the ball was switched, every time they switched the ball, Cunha was nowhere to be seen. And that wing, they kept using that wing of Shaw until a point that he got a yellow card. So it was a bad game from him today. Mbeumo also didn't impact this game. He had a poor game overall. He's getting to a point where he's not impacting the games the more. I think he should have been substituted earlier for Ahmad. Ahmad should have been given more time to have an impact on this game. Sesko, I gave him a 6/10. There's nothing he could have done without being supplied enough. The team didn't supply him enough. Dalo came on, he wasn't putting in crosses. Malaysia wasn't putting in crosses. Mazraoui, Shaw, none of the fullbacks were putting in crosses. Even Cunha and Mbeumo, and you need that presence. When he had that presence, especially when they went one man down, they should have pampered that Newcastle backline with enough crosses, and one of them would have fallen to Sesko. Or even if it doesn't fall to Sesko, then the other players can come on and shoot, and that would have given us a goal. Dalot came on and had one of his poorest games, and this is why I think Dalot should be one of the players that is sold, because he fools you for a few games and you think he's a good player, then he comes on 1 or 2 games and then he has so poor games that are below average, a player that you'd expect from Man United. Malaysia just finished. There's nothing to talk about. Malaysia came on and he was terrible from the moment he came on. And that Ursula goal, he's come on, he's not even finished 10 minutes on the pitch. We expect that he has the pace and he can be able to at least block the game, but he didn't have an impact on that goal. He let Ursula cut in very easily, and once he cut in very easily, he had to take a shot, and he put in a very good shot that was a sublime finish. Lamens couldn't get to the ball, and there is no way he could save that goal. So Malaysia was supposed to stop Ursula, or at least do something that would destabilize him for Maguire to come in and clear the ball, but he didn't impact that ball at all, and he was poor, and his reason, in my opinion, where that goal was scored. Ugarte, every time Ugarte comes on, we tend to lose the game. At this point, it's just one terrible transfer. I don't know how we ended up with a player like Ugarte, because every single time he comes on, we lose the game. I think there was a statistic where he had played 7 games, and in all those 7 games, he had lost those games. And this is also another game where he comes on and doesn't impact the game. And in fact, there was one chance towards the end where he has the ball. We are trying to create at least one more chance before the referee blows his whistle, and then he slips and gives the ball away. And it's a common theme. Yes, nobody can slip in the field, but this is a common theme with Gate. He keeps on losing the ball in crucial moments, and if you are a midfielder and you keep on losing balls, then you can't impact the game. Zaxi came on and he had a good shot. One of his shots that pulled off a world-class save from Ramsdale was a very good hit shot, and he also had an impact on the game, but he didn't really have that much time to impact the game. So did Ahmad. Ahmad also came on, and it was towards the last minutes of the game. The players are defensive, so he can't really take advantage of the one-on-one moments that he has. So he is also a good player that always depends on the one-on-one. But as long as Newcastle were defending by then he couldn't have had that much of an impact on the game. So the lack of substitutions early really cost us, and the substitutions that were made, especially Casemiro and Shaw, coming off for Ugarte and Dalot, the two of them were always going to mess this game up, and that's what happened in the game. If you look at the chances, if you look at the attacking, the Newcastle had 12 shots, we had 14. We created 11 chances of their 8. They had 5 shots on target, we had 5, and this is just embarrassing, because if you look at the second half, we needed around 20 minutes before we had a shot on target. Newcastle, I think, by then had 2 shots on target, where they were 10 men down, but they kept bringing the game at us, and it shows something that is seriously wrong with this team. They just thought it was going to be cruising from then on, and they were not prepared to put in the effort that you need to win this game. Even with 10 men, you still have to put in the effort. They also had more of the shots on target, so they were trying more. So this is something that is worrying. If you consider in the XG, Newcastle had an XG of 2.22 while they played the game 10 men. So they had they were the deserved winners of this game. They had more of the shots that were clear cut that you could think they would score from. They also had more of the threatening positions. They played the game very well, and in 10 men we had at a point where 30 minutes into the second half, the still possession 50-50, and we should be having more of the ball, we shouldn't be using it well, but none of the players were really impacting this game, and this was a terrible performance by Man United. Once again, that shows there's something wrong with this team, but mostly with the tactics. This is not something that you can really now pin on Ruben Amorim. This is something that you needed to see how Michael Carrick would impact a game when you are on 10 men, and this is a game that we were on 10 men and still we couldn't impact the game well enough. The game against Crystal Palace, we were on 10 men and we only needed one shot, and it's only that one shot that we got that Sesko scored, but we didn't create enough. This is also another game we have not created enough despite having the one-man advantage. We also didn't create enough against West Ham. We also didn't create enough against West Ham, teams that we should really be pampering, and it shows that there's something wrong with the tactics. This was a missed opportunity. As you see, Man United are in third in 51 points. Aston Villa lost earlier to Chelsea, and once Aston Villa had lost to Chelsea, if we had won that game, then we would have been 3 points ahead of Aston Villa in third. We would have been 6 points ahead of Chelsea and 6 points against of Liverpool, and that's a good cushion going into the remaining games. But now you can't really be sure about it, especially with some of the things that are happening. If you consider that after we play a game against Bournemouth, we play against Aston Villa, then we have to we have to wait 11 days, then we play Aston Villa, then from there we have to play Bournemouth on the Friday, and once we play Bournemouth on the Friday, there will be a 3-week break before we can play again. And if these players are not training well enough, then you can expect, with the lack of intensity, then the rest of the season might not be good enough, because if you can't have intensity while having that much rest, then shows something is wrong. This tactic of trying to say that you are trying to train the players less, it's not good enough. This I think there's a concept where you want to please the players. These are the lads, you want to show that you care about them, but the pleasing of the players never really works in this club, because it takes the power back to the players, and when they are not being given enough of a challenge, they go back to bad habits. And this is a case where this team is going back to bad habits, and this loss was coming for some time now, because in the last 4 games we have gotten away with it, maybe on red cards, sometimes on slight decisions. Against the Spurs, they had a red card. Against Crystal Palace, they had a red card. Against Newcastle, they had a red card, and some of those earlier games we won because of those moments where the momentum shift. And this can simply not be good enough, where in 2 games in the season we have lost against 10 man, and one of the cases is because we couldn't put in enough crosses into the box. I don't know why the coaches couldn't pamper them to just pepper the Newcastle box with crosses. Just try to make sure that Sesko wins some of them, and hopefully if he doesn't score, then they fall on to a player who can score. And this was not good enough tactically, and it shows a worry going forward. We have to see the rest of the games, and if this continues, then I think Carrick cannot be the coach. One of the things that he's not doing enough is not raising the intensity of this team, and we can't have 4 or 5 games where the intensity is not good enough, because in the Premier League, if you can't have the physicality and the intensity in games to win games, then it won't be good for you. So let's see what this week brings. It's going to be a long wait until the next game. Hopefully in the next game, Villa play on Thursday in the Europa League before playing us on Sunday. So we should have enough power or intensity by then. If you can play that game with intensity, then we can win that game. If we do the same that we did with Crystal Palace playing Thursday and then coming to dominate at Old Trafford, then it's going to be a worry. So let's see what these following days bring. I'm not happy with the results. As you can see, I've not been seen a good game, and this was a game that was lethargic. We didn't show that we needed that win, and it's going to be dangerous living this way because we are just 3 points off six. And if we continue like this, it's very easy to fall out of six, and a season that was looking promising might end up filtering, and we might still get Europe, but it's not a case where we need to get Europa League. When you're playing one game a week, we should be doing everything to win games, and right now we are not doing enough. So let's see what the rest of the weeks come. Hopefully, we bring you more news about Man United, and see you in the next one. Thank you.